your methods and my methods are probably going to be two different things. Mine are going to be some clippers and just start cutting some shit. What's up, YouTube? Hope you guys been out there building shit. I'm Aspie. You're watching The Workshop. In this episode, we're going to be rewiring this 7.3 IDI diesel with minimum wiring for a race truck build. We relocated the batteries and the solenoid inside the truck. We also installed a set of gauges, some buttons and switches to make her run. This will probably be a bit of a long, tedious, and boring video.
So, for the sake of the dirty freaking algorithm, let's throw in a nice spicy burn.
But if you ever wondered, what does this plug go to? What does this color wire do? Stick around. I'm going to break down how to put one of these wiring harnesses in a diet. And in that process, you'll learn what all the color codes are. So let's get to it. Okay, so from the solenoid, we've got the black wire, which is the one that goes down to trigger the starter. This comes from the, well, it used to be an ignition, but now it's going to be a push button that triggers this solenoid and sends power from this which comes from the battery to this, which goes to the starter. So I'm going to go ahead and get this one off. There we go. Got that disconnected. I cut this one, which I'm going to relocate this solenoid up into the cab anyways, so that'll be just fine to reach the battery. Plus I'll just need to add a new terminal on that. I'm getting rid of this style and I'm going to have the bolt-on style battery posts. So the little black trigger wire, I pulled out this away, so it's dangling down there. And now that big red wire, so now this guy, it's all loose down there. We're going to try pulling it forward and out. Take that main wire off of the starter there, and then it can come forward and out. Don't want to get that caught on anything. There we go. Awesome. So now we've got all these wires coming off of the engine harness, and I know I at least need power to at least black with the orange stripe that goes into the yellow, because that powers the glow plug harness. Need glow plugs to fire up an IDI.
How many more cans of Cosby sauce am I gonna have to spray in this dirty old 7.3 IDI before you guys will stop mouth breathing about how Cosby sauce kills diesel mills? Give it to her. All of it.
And yeah, for your information, glow plugs come in a can too. The old canned consent, the old Cosby sauce. If you ain't checked him out, check out Peg Leg. All zip ties and bias plies. If you're into these 7.3s, you'll love that channel. He's definitely funnier than me, but uses a hell of a lot more cuss words too. I try to keep it PG and family friendly around here. But the weird thing is, they come off of this and then they go as if they're going into this harness, but then yet they go that way. So it's kind of weird. I'm going to start taking all the tape and stuff off this harness and dismantling it and getting a look at it. It looks like I was right. Those ones go down into the harness, make a U-turn, and go back up that way. Pull that wiring harness out all the way over to here. And over here I'm just going to go ahead and cut it, because I don't want to deal with pulling it out all up under there. Put them junk batteries back here out of the way. Now, got a little more room there and a little more room over here to play with the wires. Went ahead and got that solenoid removed, and we are doing a 3G alternator swap, so this wiring is pretty well junk as well. Got all the wrapping, insulation, wire protection stuff off those wires. Now I'll be able to separate out the few that I need and get rid of all those that I don't. Alrighty, so first separation has occurred. We have the harness that goes to the engine here separated from, those are the glow plug controller hot wires, and they come up to the solenoid, and then from the solenoid we've got all those that were hot leads as well. And just so nobody's confused, my hot wires for the glow plugs used to go through this plug, but it's been bypassed because a lot of times those melt. That's a very common failure point, and so somebody already bypassed them around the outside.
Round the girls go round the outside, round the outside, round the outside.
Before I bought the truck. So now we just got to go through here and figure out what each of these colors do, which ones we need, and what we can cut. Already gotten all these separated out just by figuring out what comes actually out of that harness and what was loose up in this stuff, which was probably headlights, turn signals, marker lights, etc. So that's all junk. And now we've got the harness narrowed down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 wires. If you guys notice, when I was tearing this apart, I took out the harness all the way to the other side of the truck, and then I tore that harness apart, and I kept these wires as long as I possibly could so that I can route them to switches, fuses, relays. Wherever I need to route those, I'll have enough wire left over. Same within here. Everything off of that relay there, I ran them out as far as I could, and then I cut them off so that I had enough and I can route it where I want to. Now, before we get too far mounting our center console, routing wires, doing things, we want to get this relay mounted where it's going to be mounted. That way we know where it's mounted, and we don't end up cutting a wire a little too short and then we're like, oh no, it won't work. So we want things hard mounted in their place, and then cut the wires, you know, and even leave yourself a little bit extra so that it can wiggle, or you can tape it up, or whatever you're going to do with it. I came in the house with the center console that I made, a bunch of scrap wires that I pulled out of the truck that I can reuse, and brought my crimpers, my cutters, my fittings, an electrical tester, my cable crimper, bunch of cable lugs, some shrink tubing, and I did everything I could to wire up my center console. I wired up the gauges up top so that I can turn on and off the light at night. I made myself some cables with the appropriate sized lugs on the end, shrink tubed the fittings and everything. Made myself some jumper wires that I know that I'm going to be needing. So at least I was able to stay warm for that much. Now it's time to go back outside. So this is already picked over now, and I didn't film it when I started, but basically I just wanted to say, as you're taking things apart, throw yourself a pile of wires. That way, if you need little pieces, you need some jumper wires, you need to make something for your switch panel, etc., you don't have to go out and buy new wire. You can just cut a little piece out of the red or the green or the black or the white, whatever you need. Next off, at work, we're getting rid of this battery cable out of one of our big tractors because the end was all broken and messed up. So I asked my boss, hey, can I take that home? And that is going to be my new starter wire, going from the batteries down to the starter instead of the one that I had, because the one that I had was a little bit too short to make it to where I want to mount the batteries. But this one is a little bit bigger around, and it should work great. This wire here used to be between the two batteries on the truck. I'm going to go ahead and cut myself 2 short lengths, and those are going to connect the positive to the positive and the negative to the negative. On the negative one, since this is a red wire, I'll just put plenty of black shrink tubing and maybe some black electrical tape. That way nobody confuses it in the future for a positive, because it is going to be red. But I'm just doing that because I like to recycle, guys, and that's what I've got. So, not the easiest to strip fat wire like this. I mean, pleasantly plump wires like this. But get the shrink wrap tube on there, and then slide the lug on, and we'll crimp it and then heat it up and shrink that shrink tube. Couple battery cables made, battery jumpers made, and the center console assembled. Oh my. Better get this stuff out of the living room before my wife kicks my butt. Got everything stripped out, and we left the wires extra long. It's time to start getting things mounted. So we've got this solenoid here, and I'm thinking I want to mount it somewhere about like that. I'm going to go ahead and drill some holes and get it screwed in. The last couple weeks, I built a battery hold down system and I built a center console. I'll show you those now. If you want to see the videos on those, there will be links down in the description. That's what we came up with for a battery mount. I think she's plenty strong. I've given them some shakes, I've given them some wiggles. I don't think that thing's going nowhere. Center console with gauges, switches, and buttons. Remember, guys, one of the hold down screws on that solenoid had a ground, so we're going to rerun a ground to our battery when we install it. The thing that I'm thinking is, in a race truck, the more simplified you get it, the better, because if you're out there and it's time to start a race and your truck won't start, something like that, you want to be able to diagnose it real quick so that you can get out there to the track. So I'm going to show you a few ways to slim down your wiring harness. You know, put her on a diet. Give her some of that Jenny Craig. So without getting too detailed, I'll just show you a little bit of the method to my madness. Okay, I pick things that I know that I'm not going to need. Temp sensor, temp dummy light. Okay, and I look at what colors the wires are. White with a blue stripe. Come over to this. Find white with a blue stripe. Okay, so we're going to cut that right at that harness because we don't need it. We'll also cut it off of that end. Next one, red with a white stripe. Come over here. Find red with a white stripe. So we're going to cut it right down at the harness as well. So next things we're going to eliminate is fuel heater and this, which is the fuel pressure. So we've got a light blue and a dark blue. Let's go over here to our harness, and we've got dark blue and light blue. So following them through, I cut off that one, and then following dark blue through, I'm going to cut off this one. Next thing we're looking at is this plug from down underneath the fuel filter, and that's the water and fuel light, but it's solid black, and the only wires that we've got left that are black over here, one's got a purple and that one has a blue stripe. So grab the electric tester. We're going to put it to continuity test, and we'll touch one end to the inside of that connector and figure out which one is sending power over here so that we don't cut off the wrong one. And if you guys are unsure about any connection that you might be cutting or eliminating, this is a good way to do it. Do a continuity test, see which wire is exactly which wire. One end up there. Now let's stick one end in here. Nothing. Okay, and then we've got this other black one down here. Let's try it. Oh yeah. See that? Not touching. Touching. So we know that is the one that's sending the power through. Okay, the next thing we're going to do, thanks a lot, train, rude, is throw our continuity tester, our electric tester, into our fuel shutoff solenoid here. We definitely need power to it. So let's touch to there, and then we're gonna go through these wires that we've got left and make sure which one is our fuel shutoff solenoid, because we're gonna have to run that wire up into the cab and supply it power when the ignition is on. I get continuity to this biggest red wire. I already cut off half of it that was powering something else, so we're gonna have to probably cut and re-splice this so that we don't have this guy with random power dangling around and shorting out. But it's this blue one going into the plug, turns into red with a green stripe, and then after that black, it continues as a red with 2 black stripes. So Ford was real coordinated with their wiring colors. Now we just got 4 more wire colors connected to this plug that we need to figure out. White with a red stripe, red with a white stripe, plain red, and black with a red stripe. So I'm going to continue testing different plugs in different spots on the engine to figure out continuity for these, whether we can delete them, whether they need power. Got the air cleaner off because really, other than fuel shutoff solenoid, which the high idle and the timing advance are all powered by the same circuit, once those have power, your truck will run with some glow plug or some in the can. So that's that big fat, pleasantly plump wire there. Now we've got these 3 and this one. And so I'm going to pop this black cap off of the glow plug system and see which ones receive power through those wires. Alright, so we've got the 2 main fat cables which come over here. We already knew that needed constant hot. But then this next one over right here is switched power, and that comes on with the ignition, which initiates the glow plug cycle. Well, that one I just figured out is also connected to the fuel shutoff solenoid. So that same fat red wire sends power to the glow plugs and the fuel shutoff solenoid, and so basically that's the only one that needs power to make this engine run. I'm really not sure what these ones are, but I don't want to cut them yet, so I'm going to keep on investigating a little bit, seeing what I can find. Alright, so I just figured out we got continuity to this wire here, right, and is what that wire is, and it's black with a red stripe coming out of that. On this side it's just black, and then you go back here and it's that blue one. I disconnected it. The blue turns into black, okay, and is what that is your glow plug light. So when you cycle your glow plugs, the light comes on. So now we know what that wire does. Next sensor we've got is oil pressure back here. So I hooked up to it, did my continuity test, and oil pressure is this white one with the red stripe. You see? So white with the red stripe, cut it off. So we've got this main power, turns on glow plug controller, fuel shutoff solenoid, and sends power to the temperature switch that powers the high idle and timing advance. So that's what this guy does. These 2 reds left, and I'm not sure what the heck they do. So honestly, I'm just going to cut them down a little bit short. And if I need them in the future, I need them, but I don't think that I will. All the rest of those have been eliminated one at a time as stuff that we don't need, such as temperature sensor, temperature warning light, the fuel heater, fuel low pressure light. Down at the bottom we had the water and fuel light. None of that stuff's necessary, guys. We eliminated the oil pressure. So I lived so far out, I bought 17 cents worth of nuts and a few washers because my new batteries didn't come with them. But driving back to town cost me about $20 in fuel. Nice. Alright guys, so got those nuts on my battery cables, and remember, we used what we had left over from the truck, so both positive and negative are red, but the negatives at least got the black tips, and I'm really the only guy that's going to be working on this truck, so it's not a real big deal. But we got power to the solenoid, we got power going down to the starter, we got negative going to the frame. That ground is actually red because it used to be the starter wire, but it goes right down there to the frame. And then those frame mounted wires used to come to the battery, but they're mounted to the engine block. One down here at the front, and then I did one at the other side as well, right here, that goes down into the frame. We got power going over to here from the solenoid, and then we've got the switch power, that pleasantly plump red wire that turns on and off fuel shut off solenoid and also powers up the glow plug relay. Brought it in here. I'm going to put a terminal on it, and it's going to go to the post that is switched power. So when I turn on the switch, it sends power to that one. So is what we're going to do is leave this switch on and get up there and test for power. There should be power going through this red thicker wire and sending power to our fuel shutoff solenoid and the glow plug system. Alrighty, so grounded there. Let's check here, and we do got power coming through. See that lighting up? We do got power to the start button. Start button. It receives positive power and then sends positive power down this red wire with the black stripe to the starter solenoid. And then you remember that black wire that we had dangling underneath the truck earlier? It takes power from the battery, and when you trigger this solenoid, it then transfers it to this little black wire down to the starter and starts the truck. Button here and a button there. One's for glow plugs, one's for start going to send ground to the glow plugs, and so that we could control them with manual button. Alrighty guys, so a manual button on one of these trucks is actually quite easy. You basically just send negative power to this terminal here with the white wire, and that turns on the solenoid, turns on your glow plugs. If you want your wait to start light to work, you connect this blue up to that white wire so that it sends negative down that and turns on your wait to start light while you're holding the button. This is work of a previous owner. They're just kind of open. I don't feel like they're the best of connections, and my wires are long enough. I think that I can just put ring terminals and run it straight over to the solenoid and bypass all this junk. So I've gone ahead and bypassed the harness for the glow plugs as well. We've got the white wire going to the button. It sends ground that turns them on, and then we've got the black with orange. They go to there, and that's constant hot. When you trigger the glow plugs, it sends power from that one to that one and turns them on. Alrighty guys, so we've got everything hooked up except for the gauges, because had to send them back. Sometimes you're better off just spending a little more money, guys. I went through the effort to install these no-name cheap China gauges. Couldn't get them to seal the engine block. They were junk from the beginning. I could tell they were poor quality. So now I'm going through the effort to uninstall them, unwire them, and ended up spending more money, wasting time to install a better set of gauges. Waiting on a better set, but That should turn on the fuel shutoff solenoid, send power to the glow plug relay. This should engage the glow plugs. Let's give it a listen. 1,000, 2, 7, 1,000. And then we should be able to start it. Sounds like the batteries are starting to go dead. Now that I've worked myself down to just one wire in this plug and stuff, I'm going to pull this harness off all the way up to here. And I'm going to cut all the wires that I don't need. Just keep that one red one. Alright, so the only wire that we care about in this harness is this guy. So got it separated out over here, and I'm going to go ahead and cut out all the rest of those wires. Now we've eliminated all that in the plug. All those methods that I just showed you are well and good, but my actual glow plug harness has all kinds of broke off tips and stuff. So I'm going to replace it with one that I found on eBay. So I'm going to have to get even deeper into my harness, and I'm going to remove the whole thing off the engine. So I got a picture of where all those clip up here. I know where that's going to clip down there. Went back here. Those two brown wires down towards the bottom. We got to take them loose, and the red there. And then just unclip all the glow plug clips, and then this harness should come out, and then I can strip it down to the bare minimum. Now I know somebody's gonna say, oh no, you're not doing absolute bare bones wiring because you've got your high idle solenoid still in. Well, I'll tell you what, guys, I did have to just remove it to get that wiring harness out, but it actually works. It's so rare in these old Fords for the high idle solenoid to work and kick down when it warms up that I can't bring myself to remove it. So I'm going to go ahead and reinstall it after I get this wiring harness out of here. So there it is, guys. Got the whole wiring harness out. And remember, we already cut it down, so we just need to keep this one, and we need to keep this one, and all these. That's it. The rest of this can all, oh, and this one. The rest of this can all pretty much go bye-bye. So I'm going to start getting it all stripped down, taking all this protective cover off of it, and removing the unneeded wires. Alright, so we're getting all that covering off of there, and then removing the tape that's holding it all together. Probably going overboard at this point, but I'm taking off some of this because I don't know what this plug's for, and I'm hoping to eliminate it along with the rest. But I probably could have just left it in there. So, got to that plug. I'm just going to go ahead and cut this black one because it just goes to the water and fuel light. So, all this is junk anyways. I'm going to go ahead and cut that whole leg off and this off. So that whole leg is all the fuel filter stuff gone. And coming out of this end, these two were the fuel filter wires too, so I'm going to go ahead and eliminate them. So there will be a small piece of them, but I don't want to take off this harder plastic protective coating. Now, going from where the plug used to come into the truck, we've got all this stuff should just come out. Okay, so all that is junk. Yellows, junk. All the glow plug wiring is junk. So all that has been eliminated, and now we are down to exactly what we started out needing, wanting, whatever. So that brings power into the harness. That goes up to the fuel shutoff solenoid, the temp sensor, the high idle and the timing advance. This goes around and gives power to the glow plug system. So right there is literally all I needed out of that harness. But remember, I've already got main power wires going to my glow plug solenoid, and I've got the white wire which triggers my glow plugs with a push button. So remember, if you guys are going to strip down your harness, you're going to need them. Alright, so got rid of those cheap Chinese gauges. These cost about twice as much. They're 60 bucks, but they're a better brand, and looks like they came with all the fittings and stuff to make them work and fit. So time to get those installed. This gauge install is not going to be super detailed. I do got a link in the description of a full gauge install, where to plumb them in and stuff in one of these IDI trucks. But this truck had an oil pressure already, and it had this copper metal line, so I just connected it right to my new gauge. But I wanted water temp, and just figured it was easier to get a set than one more additional. And this one's sweep was so small that I could barely tell the oil pressure, so we upgraded, got that one. But now I'm installing the water temperature. I'm plumbing it right down here by the exhaust manifold. Okay, had to take this sensor out, and I'm going to use this adapter and then put this in after I tighten this adapter down. If you're wondering the size of this port, it's a 1/2 inch NPT, guys. Alright, so got that tightened in there, put some thread sealant on it, and then I wired up the lights to this end accessory switch so that we can see the gauges at night. When you turn on the vehicle, I sent power to the voltmeter. So this is to turn on the vehicle, and it also turns on the fuel shutoff solenoid and everything. But turn that on, we got voltage. Shut it off, that shuts off. That way it doesn't do a constant draw and drain the battery. Got my new Chinese glow plug wiring harness in the mail. You can definitely tell it where it came from. I can't say that I'm overly impressed by the quality. This protective plastic sheath already has some abrasions and loose pieces to it. But overall, for the price, I think it'll do. Got those routed and installed onto the glow plugs. One of my biggest complaints would just be that both these come out of that big lug at the back in the same direction, so you gotta wrap one wire, kind of kink it around, versus if they came out two directions, or if there was maybe two lugs, one for each bank or side, that would be a little easier. They do slide right onto the glow plugs nicely. They fit securely, so I don't really have any complaints about that. The terminal that feeds the glow plugs off this controller is this one right down here. So I've taken the nut off that and disconnected my harness already, but that's where we're gonna install this new harness that we bought. We're gonna be doing a 3G alternator swap. Better subscribe, because that video is coming up soon. We're going to be turning this headache rack that we cut off into a grill guard. We're going to be converting one of these old propane tanks into a fuel cell. Installing this Duralift electronic fuel pump. As you watch this 7.3 IDI race truck build come along, I really encourage you, if you've got ideas, if you've got suggestions, comments, drop them down below. I try to respond to all of them. Hit that thumbs up button before you take off if you enjoyed the video. Really appreciated by this small YouTuber trying to grow, trying to beat those evil algorithms. Hit that subscribe button. You want to watch future episodes, us building this old 7.3 IDI into a race truck. Until next week, believe in what God gave you guys. Take on some projects, build, fix, create, keep building shit.